I guess without further ado, I'd just like to open it up for questions, and so I'll try my best to cope with the technology. So question, I think first one's for you, Robin. Someone's very interested, 4 people. Actually, sorry, I'll just take one step back. If you see a question that you like, I sort of mentioned this at the start, rather than trying to paraphrase it and retype it, best thing's just to upvote it and then it'll come to the top. So anyway, going back to this, sorry. Robin, very interested in sensing for disease detection. What do we need to do to roll your rapid eye results out into the real world?
That's a very good question.
Hello? Yep. That's a very good question. So Rapid Eye is actually readily available. I think it's free as well. Can you correct me if I'm wrong? But yeah, so you can go and download the satellite tiles pretty easily from the internet. And then it's just a question of, just sort of running some analysis and something like ARC. So it's fairly simple. If you come and chat to me afterwards, I can go into a bit more detail.
Thanks. Dave, next question for you. Currently, there are very sophisticated avoidance programs for UAVs. Have UAVs carrying LiDAR been trialled below the canopy?
Again, a really good question. There is a group, I think Robin mentioned it briefly in his talk, that are working on developing under canopy flight. So a group at the University of Auckland has a student working on that problem. But there very recently has become a UAV system, I would call it, available, which incorporates LiDAR and also does obstacle avoidance using the LiDAR unit. So our work with the handheld LiDAR started with a unit called the ZEB1, a little handheld unit. There's been recently a successor to that, the ZEB Horizon, which is a more sophisticated handheld unit. But it's actually the same group back at CSIRO in Australia, where the origins of that work was done. There's another offshoot from that, which is materialised as a UAV system, which carries a LiDAR scanner. So as well as scanning the environment, it's also using the LiDAR information to detect obstacles and avoid them. And we're hoping to run a trial soon with those people to see how it might perform under canopy. They might understandably be a little bit nervous about us asking them to put their expensive system amongst trees, but yeah, it's that kind of technology which I think will be becoming available soon.
And while you're holding the microphone, another question, and I know it's related to a lot of the work you've done with tree counting, is how far away are we from being able to auto-count trees from UAV imagery that everyday foresters collect? For example, precision forestry stocking counts or mortality surveys?
Yeah, well, I think really close, actually. Perhaps not all of you had the opportunity to attend yesterday. We had a workshop on phenotyping, the phenotyping cluster group. Grant Pearce and Alan Tan, a couple of my colleagues who sit very near me, and they've been very busy working with deep learning methods that are auto-detecting, at this stage, seedlings, so perhaps a slightly easier problem than older trees, but really staggering results. And so if you didn't have an opportunity to see that yesterday, maybe you should track Grant or Alan down in the next break and have a chat with them. Pretty amazing stuff.
Okay, it looks like there's a little pause from the questions coming from the poll everywhere. Just an opportunity, I guess, for those of you who are not using the technology, if you just want to ask a question using the sort of the old-fashioned method, I'll open it up to the floor if there's questions. Oh, we've actually got one back. Okay, so the person's typed it in. Is there scope for infrared or multispectral imagery capture to be able to be added to regular commercial drones as opposed to the more expensive octocopters?
Yep, very much so. You can now buy, so most people would be familiar with the DJI Phantom 4. A couple of weeks ago they released a multispectral version, so it's got an integrated multispectral camera, and it's also got an RTK GPS, so you're getting centimetre accuracy mapping at the same time. So yeah, there's a few options available out there.
What sort of price tag is it?
I think it's about 15k, but yeah, there'll be some second-hand ones on Trade Me in a couple of years. So. Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a question around, I think, a lot of what we talked about in the session today was sort of around stand structural elements, and I guess it was probably touched on a little bit yesterday in the phenotyping workshop, but, what opportunities do you see going forward for, say, phenotyping for other traits, sort of some physiological traits around, say, nutrient availability or disease? Is that, somewhere where we see the, future direction heading? Just sort of comment for anyone, I guess.
Yeah, so I'll have a stab at that one. So yeah, I think some of the work that our team's doing, like particularly Mike Watt's doing quite a lot with hyperspectral at the moment. So being able to bring in hyperspectral analysis, we can start to look at more of the physiological traits that you can't see with the naked eye. So potentially, like we've got a trial at the moment at Scion where we're looking at different nutrient treatments on trees. I know one of my colleagues, Ellen, has been in the nursery for about the last 6 months feeding and nurturing these trees and measuring them every day. So we're getting some really good results with that. And that's also, you could capture that data from a UAV, and there's going to be a satellite coming online, hyperspectral satellite, in the next year or two. So that's one thing. Also, things like detecting red needle cast or other needle diseases before they're visible to the human eye could be a possibility too.
I think the point is mostly about combining this data and bringing all the data together because you can detect things through the nutrients and the soil that are not really available yet through remote sensing. So we'll be able, through sensoring, through remote sensing and through computer, to be able to put everything together and getting a better understanding of the physiological interaction with the microbiome and also with the environment around it.
And in terms of just bringing together, you brought a lot of data together, and I guess as we go forward, you may bring bigger, more complicated data sets. Is there a limit to the sort of our ability for computing power to handle these data? You're the sort of the big data person. How much more capacity have we got to hoover in this data? Can we go to sort of whole tree or individual tree modelling at large scales? Tens or hundreds of thousands of hectare scale.
Yeah, there is a balance between the computational power and the time needed for the process to be done. So I guess it's mostly how much power we have right now will require a couple of weeks to be able to model maybe 1 tree or 2 trees. But with the technology rising up so fast and so quick, that we'll probably be able to see some really good simulation in the next couple of months coming. And the data science is a really fast-moving domain of application for forestry as well. So, yeah.
I think there's a question down the back.
From what you guys have been saying, you've improved on improving understanding of standard minus radiata to a bigger one, a much more targeted one. But I just wondered how far you've gone along to quantifying how many different varieties of minus radiata you finish up to match all the targets you're looking for. And one of the main criteria for deciding how many you're going to go for in, say, the next 10 years.
Are we talking about genotype varieties? Yes. So the idea here would be to, for now, I think they select 17 to 20 different genotypes per stand. So thanks to a method like the area-based phenotyping, you're able to select your best of 5 per stand. But then, after that, you can look at the stand with the same environmental variable or soil information and look at the best tree, the best genotype across those stands and try them on the new stand that you want to test. So you are not reducing the capability of your stand because the best genotype are already there, but you at the same time being able, instead of planting 15 random seed, you are able also to select the best seed across the forest, not only across the stand.
What the answer I was looking for,
sorry.
I understand the process of what you're doing, but what variety are you going to pick? What range of varieties are you going to finish up with? Whether there's going to be 10, some there for dry, some for cold, some for different end uses or whatever. Have you got an end target of, say, developing 20 varieties in the next 10 years, or just maybe 100?
I think that possibly I'd use Chairman's prerogative maybe to, I think that, that's really a question, particularly with your tree breeding and deployment programs, and that's a conversation you really want to have with your tree breeders. And it's about balancing productivity gain, I guess, around, it was also looking at risk, about maintaining a certain level of genetic diversity, because there's a danger, and if you hone in on a very small number, you shrink your genetic diversity, and there's plenty of research and anecdotal evidence, and the tree breeders in the room here are probably best placed to have a conversation with you, during the break on just what your appropriate strategy is on balancing those factors. But here, really, the research is about trying to characterise that performance to input into those final decisions. So I think, effectively what the team have shown is the range of capability that has been developed that enables you to really understand a lot more about the performance and what drives performance, and you can use that then to better inform those decisions. I don't know whether the geneticists in the room have any comment, and maybe a question to bring up again in tomorrow's session on genetics.
If I can add, but from my perspective, it's not about reducing the varieties, because maybe in 10 years a new disease will appear and your stock of 10 varieties will be susceptible to this disease, and then you will ruin everything. The understanding is to characterize better your genotype and to say, oh, this genotype increase the number of traits, not saying only the GF factor is that, but the capability to resist to cold, to frost, is higher to this genotype. So if you're in an area with a lot of frost, then you might want to try this one rather than one which is producing better with mild spring temperature rather. So not about reducing, but expanding with better characteristic, also the seed lots. Yeah.
Okay, and are we time for time, are we? Or could I have one last? Grab one last. This is a really good wrap-up question. It's just very quickly, just if you cast your mind ahead 5 years, what do you think forest owners will be doing with this technology? Good. One quick soundbite each.
You go first.
I think what we're presenting today will be the pipeline. We look at the UAV to scan large hectare forests. Then you characterize your stand between poor performing and high performing, and trying to increase the poor performing stand by changing the genotype, because now you know how to characterize your environment, and you can reevaluate your soil, and you do new prediction based on the model. And once you have also performed across your estates for the best stand and the lowest stand, you can go down with a GPS map like they have presented to the actual exceptional tree. And by exceptional, I mean not only the biggest one, but also the smallest one. Why are those one really small? And try to understand at the individual tree what is happening on your stand. Is it about too high competition, or is it the topography of your terrain which is not suitable for planting?
Probably should end it there, and that's actually a really nice comment to end on. So, and I am getting the glare from the timekeeper. So if you could just join me again in thanking our speakers.